Welcome to another episode of the Neoliberal Round podcast. This is a summary of Lecture 5 of Caribbean Thought, a course at the Jamaica Theological Seminary, lectured by me, Reverend Renaldo McKenzie, dated February 11, 2023. This is a continuation of Week 4 and the lecture series towards developing a Caribbean Thought journal. The lecture was quite powerful, as usual. We continued from Week 4, conceptualizing the course Caribbean Thought, when we had asked, what is Caribbean Thought and who determines this? This week we asked, why, who determines this? And why is it important for us to revisit the past? The lecture delved into this question by lifting up a current situation in the Caribbean, the Haitian Crisis, where the US and Canada is pressuring the Caribbean to intervene in Haiti on their behalf. And you can see the podcast or the YouTube video with Brian Concannon on this story. We examined this issue in relation to the Caribbean socio-economic challenges which has defined present realities, which imposes on cultural identity. We explored this within the context of our understanding of the Caribbean being part of the Pan African struggle for not just independence but economic prosperity that allows them to compete in the world. When we go back in history, we explore situations where the Caribbean's inability to truly realize Pan-African goals in light of strategy that continued to keep these peoples and countries down. And of course, thinking about debt. We begin the class by revisiting the conclusion of the class, that the Caribbean, the previous class, that the Caribbean represents a people who have been disrupted, detached, displaced, hybridized, and made into dependent capitalist states with some level of modernity to promote consumption within the neoliberal globalized world, which is largely a consumer society. We then moved into Lecture 5 by exploring the course outline, the course description, which says that this course focuses on and explores the diverse currents of Caribbean thought which have influenced the development of Caribbean societies from colonialism to independence and beyond. It traces the history of resistance and examines the quest for equality and the challenge of defining Caribbean identity within this post-colonial and neoliberal globalized world, not just within the geographic sense, but also in terms of a diasporic sense. The course surveys the history and philosophy of the Caribbean and the ways in which the Caribbean has emerged as a society in the shadow of colonialism and emergence of neoliberal globalization. It examines the central ideological currents of 20th century political thought in the region and covers broad topics such as colonialism, nationalism, Pan Africanism, and of course you can see Group 2 paper on Pan Africanism, and of course you can see the entire lecture on our YouTube channel The Neoliberal Round by Renaldo McKenzie. You can visit our YouTube channel at Renaldo McKenzie, and you will see the full 3-hour lecture. But of course, Pan Africanism, and we define Pan Africanism, reading from their exceptional essay, which delved into Pan Africanism. And of course, the course will also look at socialism, Marxism, feminism, democratic socialism, and neo-conservatism, neoliberalism, globalization and deconstructivism, critical race theory, strategy and the foundations of knowledge and the hegemony of faith, economic inequality and poverty. Now, among the thinkers' works and works that will be considered throughout the course are like Marcus Garvey, George Padmore, C.L.R. James, V.S. Naipaul, W. Benjamin, Michel Foucault, Franz Fanon, Walter Rodney, Fidel Castro, Michael Manley, Edward Seaga, Bob Marley Kamau Brathwaite, Edouard Glissant and the Negritude movement, Homi Bhabha, Mike Davis, Nelson and Novella Keith, Stephanie Black and Jamaica KinCaid, Garnett Roper, next Rutherford, and of course the professor's work, which is me, yours truly. And of course we then begin to explore Caribbean thinkers. So after we did that, we went into exploring some recent Caribbean thinkers, such as Ramesh F. who wrote the book The Challenge of Structural Adjustment in the Commonwealth Caribbean in 1992. We moved into lecture 5 by now. After we read the course, the description, we moved into lecture 5 by lifting up this particular book. In the preface, very important. He wrote something that was very important. Very important. So we then begin to explore Caribbean thinkers. Ramesh F. Ramsaran, who wrote in the preface of his book, and I quote, The Challenge of Structural Adjustment in the Commonwealth Caribbean. That's the name of the book. He wrote, and I begin, the structural adjustment issue is, not surprisingly, one surrounded by intense controversy and emotion. This is because it does not concern simply with economic policies or improving government performance, but brings into question basic economic philosophy and ideology, and may also involve the effective transfer of decision-making from the local hands. That's from Ramsaran in his 1992 book. We then explore George Padmore's socialist drive for freedom. Yet Bob Marley said, and I quote, we're not Marxists or capitalists, end quote, in a Who Shot the Sheriff, Who Shot the Sheriff scene in a Netflix documentary film. Now, Edward Seaga himself, seen as the father of Reaganomics in Jamaica, yet he was not a big fan of trickle-down economics. We played a film looking at C.L.R. James' life and his book, The Jacobins, which is a book from a subaltern perspective. We talk about history from below, a history told by the formerly oppressed or the oppressed. He was from Trinidad, was interested in the Haitian Revolution, and wrote about how Haiti was able to beat Napoleon and the Europeans. Yet we celebrate Haiti as the first former colonized black country to successfully lead a revolution beating Napoleon. But France turned around and charged them $24 billion to recognize their freedom, which Haiti gullibly paid. That has held them down all these years. Now, let me wrap up this by saying, I said in the class, needless to say, the Caribbean remains vulnerable and open to penetration from without and exogenous shocks from within, and is recreated within the mold and frame of its former masters since decolonization and independence. These former masters are now landlords within the newly created globalized world, where freed men now pay rent. This is the new condition of the Caribbean and the world since decolonization and the drive for a post-colonial world, where the Caribbean had a dream of nations of freedmen who were sovereign of their own lives, met a neoliberal globalized world in the 1970s and beyond, where nationalists succumbed to denationalization of the nation so as to free up globalization. Now, this was a type of globalization, neoliberal globalization, that ultimately continued a strategy of Pharisaicalism, now defined in the 20th century as the bureaucratic phenomenon, where established rules made through arrangements only governed the few nations and freed peoples. But the old masters and their new elite friends of the Washington Consensus were largely above those rules. As for them, the law is not a shackle. Only those who are within a particular dynamic of life and society. The question of what is anything is a question about life, requiring an investigation about what is true about reality. Life is what people make it and make of it. We speak of life. We are talking about the experience of what is, or the reality of the experience of those who give meaning to the existence of life through the lived experiences of peoples in spaces and places. The essence of life comes from the relationships between and among people, so that we have determined that life is not just what people make it, but that life is about people and how they relate within that man-made space. However, Fanon, the Marxist psychiatrist, anarchist, from the colony of Algeria, now independent of France, argued in Wretched of the Earth, in his psychoanalysis of the black and brown colonized men, that their depersonalization was done in order that they could be subdued within the dynamic of life. What is life then in reality of truth if man comes into the world with a thinking, an identity for him or her, as if the world was created from without, for them to occupy their stations without objection? But the world is created to serve interests. Whose interests? Man or God? But God may be the invocation man has used to justify a space in the dynamic of life, which has given or had given rise to and maintained monarchies, nobilities, popes, wealthy rulers posing as capitalists and Marxists, institutions, empires, and peoples, privileges and positions in life. Therefore, the question of what is the Caribbean must also follow who is asking and or who determines this, the subject or the object. This is because the truth of anything is objectified within the subjective, usually the dominant view that defines the purpose and reality of the thing being objectified. If the colonized is depersonalized, then he is always in the objective. What is the Caribbean? Is a question from thinking about one's identity concerning a truth about some reality. However, can we know anything given the problem of arriving at truth and knowledge? In Descartes, or in fact Descartes, the father of phenomenology, asserts that we cannot truly know anything outside of our own minds for sure when he arrived at cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. Because when one denies his own reality in order that one may begin to come to the truth of reality, he or she can't help but acknowledge the presence of one's mind that is thinking. This argument, though limited as it does not provide any deeper understanding of the total reality of life, is important to post-colonial studies and the question of what is. It speaks to the realization of the person in coming to his own reality and understanding of self, the power of the individual's mind and thinking to shape and realize his own reality and truth. Yet Fanon writes that the colonized man is depersonalized and a political creature whose idea of the self is estranged from him or her. But the question of what is the Caribbean also connects to our past, present and the future, and must consider where and when does the Caribbean history of the people and its peoples begin. The Taino peoples, Europeans, Africans. The dynamic we currently occupy comes from a history of struggle that has left the Caribbean with a new identity that is in tension. We concluded with Edouard C, Prime Minister of Jamaica, in a 1983 lecture, where he says, and I quote, "I wish to talk to you about the strategy, which I believe can best attain a quality of life for the peoples of middle-level countries of the developing world. He said in the lecture, in the final analysis, all democratic governments are committed to improving the quality of life and range of opportunity of the people they represent. But to do so, to achieve those goals of broad humanitarian development to which wisdom and compassion compel us, we must examine with detachment the strategies which give us the greatest chance of successfully reaching them. Quite powerful. And then, of course, we ended the lecture like that. Now, I will stop here. If you want to see if you want to listen to the entire lecture or see the entire lecture, please visit Renaldo McKenzie YouTube channel. And we're gonna have the actual lecture points available in my book Neoliberal, Globalization, Reconsidered, and we'll publish excerpts of it in RenaldoCMcKenzie.com and the Neoliberal.com. This is the Neoliberal Corporation, serving the world today to solve tomorrow's challenges by making popular what was the monopoly war game. But of course, if you can get the full lecture by going to our YouTube channel, and we will upload a bonus version of this, which may not be available on Spotify, but it will be available on Anchor and so on and so forth, which is being uploaded right now. It should be available in about 2 hours, and the full lecture, the video, will be available on our YouTube channel. Visit us at anchor.fm/theneoliberal and donate to us at anchor.fm/theneoliberal/support. And of course, send us an email at renaldocmckenzie@gmail.com or renaldo.mckenzie@jts.edu.jm. And of course, visit us at www.theneoliberal.com or renaldocmckenzie.com. Now, of course, I'm working on a new book, Neoliberal, Globalization, Reconsidered. That's a work in progress. That is being done with Professor Emeritus Dr. Martin Oppenheimer. And of course, you can get a copy of my current book, Neoliberalism, Globalization, Inequality, Poverty and Resistance, which is available worldwide.